Hello, hello, hello. We are back with Chapter 2, Lesson 6, and we are talking about equivalent fractions and decimals. Now, a word equivalent, what that means is the same. So we're trying to figure out today, we're learning about fractions that are the same as decimals that can be written as the same thing. So they're the same thing, they're just written in two different ways. So in example 1, we're going to be writing as fractions, and we're going to find their equivalent decimal, which means we're going to just find the different version of the same thing. So we are going to write each fraction as a decimal and round to the nearest hundredth if necessary. So this first one is 1/4, or 1/4. Now, another way that you can say this is 1 divided by 4. So what we're going to do to figure out the decimal equivalent, we are going to do 1 divided by 4. So we're going to do some long division to convert it into its decimal. So 4 doesn't go into 1, so I'm just going to write this decimal and put a 0 there and think of this as 10. Now, when you put the decimal here, when you're doing long division, the decimal goes directly above it. So does 4 go into 1? No, it doesn't. So I'm going to write a 0 there. And then I'm going to say, well, does 4 go into 10? It does go into 10. How many times? It goes in 2 times. And then 2 times 4 is 8. And then 10 minus 8. 10 minus 8 is 2. There's a remainder, so I'm just going to go ahead and add a 0 here, and I drop it down. And then we're going to see how many times 4 goes into 20. Well, 4 goes into 20 how many times? It goes in 5 times. And then I go 5 times 4, which is 20, and I subtract, and there is no remainder. So that is the decimal equivalent of 1/4. It is equal to 0.25. Okay, let's go on to do the next one. B, 9/5. I'm going to give myself a little bit more space. So this is 9 divided by 5. So to find the decimal, I'm just going to do some long division. So 9 divided by 5. Does 5 go into 9? It does. It goes in 1 time. 1 times 5 is 5. And I'm going to subtract. 9 minus 5 is 4. There's a remainder, so I'm going to add the decimal here. When I add it here, I'm going to add it right here. I'm going to add a 0. And then I'm going to drop this down. I like to say, I'm going to drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot. I'm dropping that 0 like it's hot. Okay. And then we're going to see how many times does 5 go into 40. 5 goes into 40 8 times. 8 times 5 is 40. And there is no remainder. So we know that 9/5 is the same thing as 1.8. That is the decimal equivalent of 9/5. Okay, on to C. 5/3, or 5 divided by 3, or 5/3. Those are 3 different ways to say the same thing. So we're going to use long division to figure out what the decimal equivalent is. So I'm going to go 5. Well, that wasn't a very good 5. 5 divided by 3. Does 3 go into 5? Yes, it does. It goes in 1 time. Then we're going to multiply. 1 times 3 is 3. We do the subtraction for long division. 5 minus 3 is 2. There's a remainder. So I need to make a decimal here, put the decimal up there, and add a 0. And then I'm going to go ahead and drop that 0, and I'm going to drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot. Okay, how many times does 3 go into 20? 3 goes into 26 times. 6 times 3 is 18. And then I go 20 minus 18 is, I got to borrow, 10 minus 8 is 2, and that's a 1. And so that's 0. And I have a remainder. So I'm going to add another 0 and then drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot. Now I have 20. And here I go again. 3 goes into 20 how many times? Well, it goes into 6 times again. 6 times 3 is 18. And it looks like we are getting into a little bit of a pattern. So I think what's going to happen is I keep adding these zeros and dropping it down. It's 20 again. 3 goes into 20 6 times. And then 6 times 3 is 18. And then we subtract. And there's another 2. And I add another 0 and I drop it down. And it's just this like never-ending process. So what that means is we're dealing with what's called a repeating decimal. This is just going to keep going. 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. for a really, really long time. So this is an instance where it says write each fraction as a decimal and round to the nearest hundredth. Now, if you remember, this is the tenths, this is the hundredths place. So we're going to look at this 6. This 6 is it's more than 5, so that means we're going to round this 6 to a 7. So the decimal equivalent rounded to the nearest hundredth would be 1.67. That would be the answer there. Okay, so let's look below. And it says you can use a calculator to check your division. Now on these particular examples, I want you doing the long division. I want to see all your work just like how I've done it here. But we can go ahead and use a calculator to check our results. Now how you do that, when you have 1 over 4, 1/4, that's the same thing as 1 divided by 4. So in your calculator, what you do is exactly what it says, 1 divided by 4, and it's written here, 1 divided by 4, that's 1/4. So that's how you put it in your calculator. 1, once it turns on, 1 divided by 4, and then you press equals, and that equals 0.25, and that's the same answer that we got up there. So that is correct. Okay, let's go ahead and do the second one, which is 9/5 or 9 divided by 5. So I'm going to clear that out. I'm going to go 9 divided by 5 and press enter. And we get 1.8. And so we did that one correctly. So that is correct. And then we're going to do the last one, which is 5/3 or 5 divided by 3. So I'm going to do it right here. I'm going to clear that. And I'm going to go 5 divided by 3. And what do we get? We get 1.666667, and the calculator just rounded that. That would be a 6, but it ran out of space in this screen, so it rounded its last digit to 7. But for us, we are going to round it to the nearest hundred. So that's the tenths, that's 100. That 6 rounds that 6 up to a 7. So our answer is 1.67, which is exactly what we got. So all right, there we go. So now it is your turn to check it out on example 1. You have a couple problems right here. 3/4, 6 over 5, and 7/3. And I want you to use your long division and find the decimal equivalent, and we will figure it out. So go ahead and pause. There's our little friend, the pause dragon. Remember, it's to pause. And then when you get done, press play, and we'll see how you did. All right, we are back. Let's go ahead and see how we did. So we're going to go for the first one, 3 over 4, which is the same thing as 3 divided by 4. Does 4 go into 3? No, it does not. So we're going to add a decimal, add a 0. Does 4 go into 30? Yes, it does. How many times? 7 times. 7 times 4 is 28. And then we subtract. 30 minus 28, I'm going to borrow. 10 minus 8 is 2, and then that becomes a 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. We have a remainder, so we're going to add another 0, and then we're going to drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot. All right. So we have 4 going into 20. How many times does 4 go into 20? It goes in 5 times, and then 5 times 4 is 20. We subtract, and we have no remainder, so that is our decimal equivalent. 3/4 is the same thing as 0.75. If you got that right, yokorekimashita. You did it right. A great job. That's what it means in Japanese. Okay, on to B. We have 6/5. So we're going to figure out the decimal equivalent, which means we're going to go 6 divided by 5. Does 5 go into 6? Yes, it does. 1 time. 1 times 5 is 5. We go 6 minus 5, and we get 1. And then we need to, we have a remainder, so we need to keep going. And we're going to add a 0, and then we're going to drop it down. And then 5 goes into 10 how many times? 5 goes into 10 2 times, and then we go 2 times 5 is 10 minus, and we have a 0 remainder. So our answer, our decimal equivalent to 6 over 5 is 1.2. So if you got that right, great job, you're awesome. On to problem number C. We have 7 divided by 3. So we're going to do the long division. 7 divided by 3. Now, does 3 go into 7? The answer is yes, it does. How many times? 3 goes into 7 2 times. 2 times 3 is 6. Then we're going to subtract. 7 minus 6 would be 1. We have a remainder, so we need to keep going. I'm going to add the decimal there, add a 0, and drop it like it's hot, drop it like it's hot. Okay, 3 goes into 10 how many times? 3 goes into 10 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9, and then we subtract. We have 10 minus 9, which is 1. We have a remainder, so we need to keep going. We're going to drop that 0 down. And then we have 3 going into 10. Again, how many times does 3 go into 10? It goes in 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. And it looks like we're developing a bit of a pattern. So we're going to drop this 0 down one more time. And I get 10. How many times does 3 go into 10? It goes in 3 times, just like it did last time. 3 times 3 is 9. And then this is just going to keep going forever and forever and forever. 3 goes into 10 3 times. Okay, and it's going to keep going. 3, 3, 3. So it's going to be a repeating decimal. So what the question says is round to the nearest hundredth. So this is the 10th. This is the hundredth. So we look here. Is this 5 or above? No, it is not. So that means our answer is just going to be 2.33. So if you got that right, great job, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.